StrayAllDay.com.
You're now tuned into the show where you learn the discipline to show up day after day, to do the work, the confidence to put yourself out there boldly and authentically, and the mental toughness to continue showing up, doing the work, putting yourself out there, even when the success you're expected to achieve has yet to be achieved. And on top of all this, you get a huge dose of personal initiative. That is the go-getter energy that moves any one of us, including yourself, to go and make things happen instead of waiting for things to happen. And then we put all this together into a series of frameworks, approaches, insights, strategies, and techniques all underneath the umbrella of one unified philosophy that is called Work on Your Game. My name is Dre Baldwin, also known as Dre All Day. Welcome to the show. Today's topic is, we are picking up on the next part in our series, which is the biggest lies you have been told about professional development. We did parts 1 and 2 already. We're picking up on part 3. Before we get started, I want to remind you of one thing: that is my daily motivation and Monday motivation message, guaranteed to have you focused, sharp, and on point to start your day or your week, respectively. All you got to do to receive that is go to text me. Go to your text message app. Text me my number 305-384-6894. Once we start sending messages out again, you may not get immediate response right now. As of this recording, we aren't sending it, but we may be by the time you get this. You'll be getting the message once we start sending it out again. Just text me now so it's taken care of. The number is down below in the description. Secondly, Work on Your Game University. If you'd like to have me as your direct coach, you're serious about getting to the top of your game, you're serious about no longer letting time go by and not being where you want to be, go to workonyourgameuniversity.com. If you're one of those people, then you already know I'm talking to you. I don't need to give you a long pitch on it. Just go to workonyourgameuniversity.com. You know if I'm talking to you, and you also know if I'm not. Let's move on and get into the topic here, which is, we're picking up on part number 7. Was the biggest lies you've been told when it comes to professional development. Lie number 7: you have to sacrifice your personal life for career success. This is a lie. Now, I'm not saying that this doesn't happen, because it absolutely does. There are people out there who have sacrificed a lot of their personal lives in pursuit of their career success. And I'm not saying that you were wrong for doing it if that's what you've done up to this point. I will call this one a half truth and a half lie, because there are some people who will tell you that based on their line of work and their experience, that it's required that you get 60-hour work weeks. You got to sacrifice home life, and you got to sacrifice going to your kids' soccer games and not having quality relationships outside of business if you want to be a wildly successful person in their line of work. And people are saying that based on their personal experience, because that's what they had to do. They did 60-hour work weeks and they became successful, and they say, I would do it again, because they accepted the trade-off that comes with this. And to help this point, again, there are many examples of people who have lived this exact life and have become, by all means that we measure it, successful. All right, so there is evidence that supports the concept that you sacrifice your personal life for career success. There's plenty of evidence on it. That's why I said there's a half lie and a half truth. At the same time, there are others, just as much, who have done things differently and become successful just as well. They didn't do 60-hour work weeks. They didn't sacrifice their home relationship. They did not miss out on our kids' soccer games, and they still became just as successful as the others. And there are other people out there who didn't have much of a personal life to sacrifice. They didn't have a personal life, so there was nothing to sacrifice, because they didn't have anything other than their career or their business. So it's very important that when you hear people talking about these things, you understand their personal situation, because there are entrepreneurs out there or career-focused people who are working 60, 70, 80-hour work weeks. They don't have a family. They don't have kids. So they're not missing out on these soccer games, and there ain't none. There ain't no soccer games. They can spend all their time working. They're not missing anything, because there's nothing to miss. So you got to be careful who you're asking. Find somebody with 5 kids and a wife. Ask them if they're working 60-hour weeks. They probably aren't in a situation where they can. Doesn't mean they can't be successful. And again, it depends on how you measure success. Success can be measured. Success is in the eyes of the beholder. The person who is talking about themselves in their own situation, they determine what success is. You can't tell someone else what success is for them. They tell you, and then you can help them once you understand what their vision of success is. You can't prescribe to another person what successful means, because for one person, successful means I have a healthy family and a strong relationship with my family, even if that means I need to leave work at 5 o'clock every single day because I got to be home for the family. Whereas another person says success means I make as much money as possible. If that means I got to stay at the office till 8 at night every night, I will do so, because I don't have a family to go home to. And even if I did, I would still stay at the office at 8 o'clock at night. And my family needs to understand I'm doing that to make the money. And neither one of them is wrong. You got to decide what your framework is. So again, there are people out there who have become successful and still have plenty of time to spend with their kids. They were still leaving the office when the sun was still out, and they are still able to invest in their personal relationships, their home relationship with a husband or a wife, and their kids know them. They see their kids every night before they go to sleep, and still have a successful business. Again, and they can be a wildly successful business, making just as much money as a person working 80 hours a week, depending on how your business is set up. Again, so understand, folks, this is not an all or nothing proposition. It just depends on how you set things up. And there are different ways to set anything up. Coming to the university, I will help you with this. Now, I have over time evolved and grown as a professional and an entrepreneur, and I've come to understand more about what I told you in point number 6, was about figuring the main things that you need to work hard on and focusing on those while deleting, diminishing, or passing off everything else that tends to take up most of the time. Because I used to have this problem. I used to spend a lot of time working, a lot of hours working, because there were so many things that needed to get done on a daily basis. But I've gotten smarter and more insightful about what I actually need to do, what needs to be done at all, and then delegating and passing off other things to people who are better than me or just not me, to still make sure that those essential things but not important via me still got done. This is where success is actually created, so that you are not spending as much of your resources on the hard grinding that doesn't produce results anyway, and more of your resources on the things that actually produce the high ROI. This is especially important for those of you who are the principal in your business. You're the main person. You're the one who makes everything go. You need to be doing only high ROI activities. Now, everything else that needs to happen doesn't have to happen through you. See, it doesn't have to be done by your hands. It just needs to happen. And again, the high ROI stuff often doesn't take nearly as much time as it seems when you're doing everything. If you think about it, any of you who's in this position, you know exactly what I mean. The high ROI stuff doesn't take all day. It's all the other stuff around it that's taking up all the time. So you just got to get control of that. So in other words, folks, I'm talking about the 80-20 principle when it comes to your work. When you understand what the 80 is and what the 20 is in your business, you can put your resources into the 20% that produces most of the results. And again, it will produce more results if you just did that than if you worked 5 times harder on the 80, because the 80 ain't doing nothing for you anyway, or it's not doing much, let's say. This is how you can have a good amount of time on your hands while still creating a significant result. Even more of your resources, again, let me back up. The caveat to this is, if you want to, you can put even more of your resources into more of that 20. And this becomes a lifestyle and personal choice rather than a requirement. So if I know that 20% of my time goes to produces 80% of my results, boom, I can spend 1/5 of the time at work and still produce the majority of results. So let's say I upped it a little bit and I just doubled the amount of time I spent on the 20. I'm still only spending, what is that? And let's say if I was usually spending, let's say my day was 10 hours of work. I cut it down to 1/5 of that. So I would spend 2 hours of work and produce 80% of the result. Let me just double that to 4. I'm producing 160% of the result. And I'm done. I only got to work 4 hours a day. Now, if I want to, I can still extrapolate that out and work another 8 hours. Not another 8 hours, but a total of 8 hours a day. I just put more and more and more into the 20 that's producing 80. You get what I'm saying? So you can keep compounding on this 80-20 principle. That's a choice. That's a choice. You just get to decide what kind of life do you want and what kind of business do you want. The good news about the world we live in today is that you can pretty much design your life and your business, whereas 40, 50 years ago, if you worked, you were basically a victim of the circumstance of whatever kind of work you had based on the kind of lifestyle you had. One of them you didn't have control over. The world we live in today, you can have control over both of these at the same time. What do I want my work to look like? What do I want my life outside of work to look like? And you can adjust each one as necessary. So take advantage of that if you're not already. Point number 8. Today's topic, once again, the biggest lies you've been told in professional development. Number 8, your work will speak for itself. Oh, this is not true. Now, in a perfect world, this would be true. I would hope that this was true, but it's not true. If this was true, then all the best performers out there would be the ones getting the most accolades and recognition and attention and all of those things. That's simply not how it works. We don't live in a perfect world. The world that we live in, you must make sure that your work gets spoken for. If you are not lucky enough to have your work speaking for you, or lucky enough to have other people singing your praises on your behalf. And some people are lucky enough to have that happen all the time. Some people have it happen in small doses, and some people never have it happen. But all three of them can be very good. They can all be equally good. Well, which one's going to get the most attention? Well, the one who has everybody talking about them. So the other two had to figure out a way to manufacture the attention that is not just coming to them. And usually it doesn't just come to you. If you find yourself having it come to you, consider yourself lucky. Everybody else, we got to do a little bit more work. It's just how it works. It's an interesting juxtaposition. If you look at two guys like Michael Jordan and LeBron James, both of them pretty well known. Both of them got a lot of people talking about how great they are. But if you look at Michael Jordan doesn't do too much speaking about himself or his background or his accomplishments. I don't hear Michael Jordan saying anything. When's the last time you saw a Michael Jordan interview? He doesn't do any interviews. He doesn't do interviews. He doesn't do press. He doesn't do podcasts. He's not on social media. Michael Jordan doesn't do any of this stuff to self-promote that almost all of us do these days. But a lot of people speak on Michael's behalf about how he's the greatest player of all time. Every day you can find a conversation of someone talking about Michael Jordan, even though you never find a conversation of Michael Jordan talking about Michael Jordan. Most of the time you find him talking about him with some old stuff from years ago. He doesn't do any talking. Last thing he put out was that Last Dance documentary, which was in the year 2020, almost 5 years ago. And that was a documentary. Before that, he had last played basketball, I believe it was 2002 or 2003. Before that was Chicago Bulls in 1998, and we barely heard from the guy since then. It's been 20 years. He doesn't say anything. But a bunch of people talk about him, right? Now look at LeBron James on the other hand. LeBron James does a whole lot of press. He does a whole lot of interviews. He makes his own TV shows. He has his own podcast. He got a bunch of people in the media basically under his wing, whether they work for his company or they're a close friend of his. We all know this to be true. And these people in the media are basically arguing for and defending LeBron every day, all day. And he's had this entire campaign going on for multiple decades now to push the idea that LeBron is indeed the best player of all time. But he's doing a whole lot of talking coming out of his own camp in order to get people to accept this concept. People didn't just start saying it. He started saying it, and he got people to go along with it. I'm not saying that he's wrong, because sometimes if nobody's saying it for you, you got to say it and let them go along with it. Other times, people will say it for you, and you don't have to say anything. Michael has people speaking for him. LeBron does all the speaking for himself. Now, you might be lucky enough to be Michael Jordan, whereas you do your thing, and a bunch of people just start talking about how great you are, and you ain't got to say nothing. All right, maybe that will happen for you. Most of us, on the other hand, got to be LeBron. We got to be LeBron. You got to make sure everybody knows how great you are, and you got to tell them, either directly or indirectly, how great you are. Because if you don't tell them, they ain't going to say it. It's not going to happen. All right. Now, I would not bet money on the Michael Jordan situation happening for you. You who's listening to this, I wouldn't bet money on you just being so good that people just find you and everything just blows up on its own. If it happens, great, but I wouldn't bet money on it. I wouldn't sit around waiting for that to occur. I would be prepared to take the LeBron route. That's what I would suggest to you. I was just talking to a woman. What is her name? I was talking to Ann a couple of days ago. She had interviewed me for her podcast, and Ann was telling me how we were talking about her business that she had started years ago. And it was after we finished recording, because for most of the interview, she was just asking me about me, and I was talking about myself. And I remember Ann said, she was telling me about her business, and she said they started a business where they would put Christmas lights up on people's like buildings, like corporations and houses, and they would install Christmas lights. And they built a whole business around this. And the business just took off so much that they never spent a single dollar on marketing. Everything took off through word of mouth, and they were able to have a very healthy exit from that business. They sold the business for a very healthy number, and it just took off just by word of mouth. All right, that's like the Michael Jordan route. And I've heard of businesses doing this. They take off by word of mouth. They don't spend any money on advertising. It just blows up all by itself. Most of the time that doesn't happen. Sometimes it happens. Most of the time it doesn't. Most of the businesses that I've done, most of the products that I've sold did not happen that way. I would say the first products that I put out, my basketball training programs that I was selling for starting at $5 a piece back in 2009, those did go off that way. All I would do is put content on YouTube, and then the fans would look at it and they would see the link and they would go buy stuff. I never spent any money on advertising for that stuff. The stuff I do these days, we spend money on advertising, because the game has changed. The game is a little bit different. I'm selling a different product. I'm talking to different people. So there's different things you have to do. And that's just how it is. You just got to accept this. And again, if you are good enough that this happens, great, but don't bet on it. Moving on to point number 9. We're talking here today about the biggest lies you've been told in professional development. Lie number 9, specialization is the key to success. This is not true. This used to be true, and in some spaces it still is, but I am believing that this is becoming less and less true in many cases. So what I mean by specialization. All right, and specialization is a person who really, really niches down into a specific thing that they focus on. And the lie is that that is the way that you become super successful. Now, in some aspects, this is still a true thing, but generally, I'm seeing it become less true. In today's world, the generalist, which many people used to call in a maybe in a derisive way, a jack of all trades, this person has more value now than has ever had in the past. Why? Because there's so many different things that any individual person can do these days. We have access to so many tools right at our fingertips, literally from sitting on your couch. You have access to so many tools as long as you have an internet connection. There's so many different ways we can do things that this was not the case back in the day. So the more different skills you have, the more you can diversify yourself and give yourself more options in the marketplace. This is not to say that a specialist doesn't still have opportunities. A chiropractor has more opportunities than a general practitioner, when it comes to helping people with their backs. So there is a space for being the specialist, but there's also a space for being a generalist. All right, there are opportunities for both. And again, when you're the generalist, the more tools you have and the more ways you know to use those tools, the more opportunities you give yourself. Okay. So let's say in like the technology and artificial intelligence in those spaces, as we get more and more advancements and those advancements are eating up jobs, then the more different skills you have, the more different ways you have options to give value to others. For example, there's a Burger King in my neighborhood that is on prime real estate. I think I wonder how much money they could sell the land that this Burger King is on. If they own it, I wonder how much money they could sell this land for. I thought they were about to close the Burger King down because a few weeks ago, I saw that they had put a fence up around the Burger King. So I thought they were about to demolish it and is going to build some business right there on this corner. This is prime real estate, right in the middle of one of the most expensive neighborhoods in Miami. And then like 2 weeks later, the gate was gone and the Burger King was open again. I thought they were going to tear it down. They didn't. All they did was just remodel the Burger King. And what they actually did was they just remodeled the part where you go get the food. So the part where you sit down and eat, they didn't really change that. What they changed is the part where you get your food. So instead of walking up to a counter and ordering from a person who would take your order and then you wait for the food, what Burger King did was replace a whole bunch of those people taking orders with, you know what they replaced it with? They replaced it with these boards, basically computers, to take your order. So now you don't talk to a person to take your order. You punch in the order on the board, you pay right there, and then there's one human standing there just making sure that everybody gets their orders. That's what they did. So what did that do? The technology just killed a bunch of jobs. So it was like 5 or 6 boards. I was standing outside the Burger King taking a video of it the other day when I saw it. There are 5 or 6 of these boards where you can order your food. That used to be 5 or 6 people who had a job. Now those 5 or 6 people are unemployed. Now those 5 or 6 people, if the only skill they had was entering orders in the computer at Burger King, well, they don't have a job. They have no skills. They have nothing to offer the marketplace. They are in trouble. This is why I'm saying being a generalist gives you opportunities these days, because technology and artificial intelligence might replace the need for you at the job that you have right now. This is why I suggest you skill up. You need more skills. So the more different ways you can bring value, the more opportunities you give yourself. And you want to specialize in certain things. If you are specializing, I don't necessarily discourage specialization, but it depends on what you're specializing in. You need to specialize in something that is future proof, that can't be eaten up by artificial intelligence. I would strongly suggest you be sure you don't make an error in judgment in doing this, because if you make a mistake, it's going to cost you and you might not be able to make that back. So don't think that you're specializing in something and then AI all of a sudden can do it, and now your specialization means absolutely nothing, because then you're screwed. All right, you don't want to be screwed. Okay. Either way, I can help you though. You come work on your game university, I'll help you make sure that doesn't happen. And if it does happen, we can fix it. Anyway, let's recap today's class, which is the next 3 points in our series of the biggest lies you've been told when it comes to professional development. Number 7, you have to sacrifice your personal life for career success. Not true. It's a half truth and a half lie. It depends on what kind of life you want to live, really. It depends on what kind of career you want to have and how much time you want to put into each. You can design this. That's the great thing about the world we live in today. You are not consigned to one way of living. You can set your life up the way you want it to be, depending on your career choices and how much autonomy and power you have over your own schedule. Number 8, your work will speak for itself. Ideally, this would be great. You could be Michael Jordan and everybody in the world was singing your praises and you don't have to say anything. But most of you are going to have to be LeBron James. If you want people to think you're the greatest, you got to keep telling them over and over and over again. And every week you got to come up with a new podcast or a new YouTube video or a new clip from some show you were on, telling people that you're the greatest of all time and reigniting the conversation. So most of you are not going to be Michael Jordan. Most of you are going to have to be LeBron. You got to let people know that you're great. Otherwise, nobody's going to say it. Number 9, specialization is the key to success. Not necessarily true. There are some areas where specialization does matter. There are other areas where it is better to be a jack of all trades and have as many skills as possible. Therefore, if artificial intelligence and technology come and eat up one of your jobs, you still got 10 other jobs that you can still do. You can still bring value to the marketplace. So you're not stuck with one thing that is now in danger. All that said, tomorrow we'll be getting to the next part of this series. Go to workonyourgameuniversity.com. If you want to work with me directly, have me as your direct coach. Let's take you from where you are to where you want to go on a personal level, on a professional level, with me as your direct coach in the process, and get access to all our university stuff. That's at workonyourgameuniversity.com. Work on your game. Dre, all